whether it was Precious or a Maximus, Kerwin Dubois, Full Blown, man, just so many, Nadia Batson,
Olatunji, there is somebody else talk about as well, yeah.
Amazing talent. I always credit those managers because the ones who kind of come into...
Yeah.
I'm not mad at them, but I think it's reached the point where it's like, yeah, but you didn't have to go through this shit. But the reality is, look, that is just life. The time to be mad has passed. Trinidad is still the platform that boosts you. You make it through this carnival successfully, you become a millionaire, seemingly overnight, but you've worked your ass off for it, right? Mm-hmm. But the sad part again for artists is that, Bruno, you have to come up with a hit every year or else. And some of them would tell you flat out, if this is a hit, why am I releasing this in a time when I can't tour? It makes sense. I mean, when you think about it, it's like, yeah. But then the other part to that is, well, this is a problem. Because if you can only make money from going out and performing on a stage, then our music has not really elevated to the point where, as a genre, we're competitive. I've had artists before. Why is it that you can't get me in a room with Bruno Mars? You haven't sold 1 million albums, records, singles, whatever. Why are we having this conversation?
You are now live with us on the Corie Sheppard Podcast.
Mommy, look out for me and get through. Don't miss this one.
It's gonna be sexy.
Welcome to the Corie Sheppard Podcast. Welcome back to everybody who's been listening. Welcome to all the new listeners. David said look into the camera again, so we're here. Welcome back. Thanks for subscribing to the Patreon. Thanks for supporting the merch, right? One of the other areas of feedback that I keep getting is that we need to introduce the guests. But the problem is that I do not know how. I have with me a guest today who has been in entertainment for how long? 25? Much longer than I've been alive. 25 years. And has been, when I look at the background of the guest today, he has affected my life in so many ways, including within the next coming weeks. I want to welcome Simon Baptiste to the show.
Oh man, it's absolute pleasure.
People might know the name Question Mark Entertainment, like we're hearing it for a long time.
Right.
But coincidentally, I just scrolling through my Instagram or Facebook or one of them things recently, right? And I see Donnell Rawlings in Trinidad. So I buy 2 tickets immediately. I say, wherever is the VIP most expensive? I want to be where he is there and he's sweating. I want the sweat to land on me.
Right.
I saw him recently. I went to the in Florida at a Chappelle show and he opened for Chappelle.
That's right.
Yeah, so I got to see him and I hope that people who like stand-up comedy come out and see the show. But this is your show. You're the person doing this, yes?
Well, I mean, you get involved with partners, to produce these things. But I'm certainly one of the faces behind it.
Right.
And I mean, I think comedy is naturally in our blood anyway. I mean, if it's one group of people that know how to not only, give a joke, but take a joke.
For sure,
right?
for sure. On both ends, right?
Yeah. So naturally, I felt like if, a few years ago, I started looking at the landscape, what was there and what I could really position myself into in different things. And comedy came up as being one that I really felt close to. I'd done a lot of events in the past anyway with comedy, but people just don't know because I think I do the worst PR job ever on myself. I don't literally go out there saying, hey, I've done this and I've done that.
Right.
But over the years, I've found myself getting involved in different things, and then I'm like, oh, okay, well, I can do this too.
Right.
And that's how it came up.
So comedy was just you getting back into events and trying to find a niche?
I think certainly in the times that we live in, where there doesn't seem to be a lot to laugh about, right? I mean, the world that we're faced with today, with the good and some would argue, technological advances, etc., right? But the fact of the matter is that there's also a lot of stuff out there that has us perplexed, has us scared. We live in a sort of fear where we can't say anything about anyone.
Yeah, or anything.
Right, or anything. Right, and I think that comedy is the one stage where it's actually the most serious form of content.
Right.
Because they're saying things that we all want to say, right? Or need to hear, but it's being done in this sort of mask, right? And so that's how I view comedy as really social commentary that's safeguarded, but
I guess.
Yeah.
Especially the good ones. The good ones force us to see issues a little differently.
Yeah.
So issues that might be heavy for us, they find a way to, like people say, when you laugh about something, that's when you know you're over it.
Yeah.
So they kind of push us gently towards, hey, all this happening in the world, but the world is still a good place. Or you could look at this thing differently. So how come Donald Rawlings? What made you all decide him?
Donald? Well, actually, Donald and I have a connection in that we made a film together. I produced a film called The Rise and Fall of John Tesoro, starring Jerry Bednob and Donald Rawlings. So it goes, a little bit back. Right. And then beyond that, I've always been fond of his comedic style. I brought him to Trinidad many years ago in those sort of formative stages. And I did that with a lot of comedians. Leslie Jones.
Oh, serious?
Who went on to do Saturday Night Live and Ghostbusters and all those movies, of course. Tony Woods, who is considered to be, Dave Chappelle considers him his mentor. I mean, man, there are a ton of comedians I brought in here, and so it's not just me starting something from scratch. I know the environment.
Got it.
But the ones that are doing it now, Lurie Lee Singh and Junior Lee and Jerome, all these guys who are producing shows here, I think they're phenomenal. Right? But we need to figure out how do we now transcend from just what we're showing here on the ground to a regional or even a international space. So.
Yeah, I had Cindy Ann Boss on here, and she was talking a lot about that. She was saying that in the local comedy landscape, one of the disadvantages might be that they don't have comedy clubs. There's no comedy club circuits to work out your jokes.
Right.
But I always wonder if, and you have the experience with bringing comedians here, I always wonder how well they translate in the local environment. We like anybody with an accent and things, especially in comedy. Some always work in other genres, but comedy is like, all right, we're going to along.
They could crash and burn too.
Yeah, that's what I mean. They come on. Yeah,
I've witnessed that, right? But I think what it is that comedians like Donnell, Dave, Bill Burr. I mean, there's so many of them that understand, like, from the time they get in, they're searching for material, right? They land at the airport, they go and they grab a doubles. Like all these things, they're going to incorporate somehow. And the good ones really know how to do that, right? I think, though, that you're not just going there to hear him try to translate what he gets here there as well. It's because you enjoy stand-up comedy, right? And they're telling perspectives of life, right? Whether it's romance, right? Whether it's the job situation, it's what's happening around us, So you're going for that, just like you go to see a singer or musician perform their art, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, I guess that's me. Yeah. Because from the time I see it, I don't know who. As a matter of fact, I didn't really realize, like David was telling me, we had this schedule. I had no connection between the two.
Right.
I just see Donald Rawlings. I say, quite. It does not matter. He's just that guy to me.
Right.
No, the other thing I worry about with well, at least me from a worrying standpoint, I worry nervous kind of guy.
Yeah.
Events on a whole are a little scary for me from a business standpoint.
Yeah.
So first, how is it going in terms of the response to Donald and people buying tickets, they're coming out, people supporting it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question to ask because we live in a time in which, I think there's a lot of uncertainty, right? Fortunately, we tested the model in January. Right. We did a show during Carnival. It was, for the most part, a great lineup of our own local comic stand-ups, right? And then we also had Ja Paul as the headliner, who is Trini, but is Canadian,
right?
And he was terrific as well. And people were just really, I think what was impressive in terms of the turnout, because we had maybe at that time about 70% of the theater that was full. But it demonstrated to us that people are really interested in stand-up.
Yeah.
They just want something different. They weren't aware, for the most part, because we have a different marketing strategy, perhaps, to the comedians who are actually doing it here. So what ended up happening was it wasn't necessarily their audience, right? It was just an audience that came in to see stand-up and were superbly impressed by what they saw. But when I do anything, be it an event, show, concert, summit, the reality is that I don't build something just for us. What we did with that particular show and we're doing for the future of the shows is that, we brought in April King, Jamaican, but loves Trinidad, is always here for Carnival. One of the top executives in the entertainment game, has brokered deals with Netflix. And she saw what we have, and we worked with ADL, and we taped the show, and now we're actually trying to package it as a POC or pilot so that we can get more shows like that developed and produced. So we could go to Jamaica and do the same thing, Barbados and do the same thing. And then all of a sudden you turn onto Netflix and you have 6 episodes of great comedy, but from our people.
Yeah, I wonder what that's a lot. Like Netflix has been going in that direction for a long time, right?
Yeah.
Stand-up comedy. You would remember Comedy Central being that hub.
Of course. Yeah,
everything was there.
Yeah.
And then there was a huge gap, like where HBO did it for some time, but I guess HBO does top of the top.
Yeah.
Maybe twice a year you see a special come out from somebody.
Yeah.
But no, Netflix special seems to be the thing that even Donald Rollins just put out one coincidence.
Yeah, he did Netflix as a joke, I think.
Yeah,
right?
And he did his own he released his own special. I think Chappelle did 4 comedians that he platformed. I think it was
Right.
Earthquake, Lunel, Donald Rollins, and somebody else was missing.
Yeah.
But you see us being able to hold those spaces. Are we in a world where our Trinidadian comedians could have a special on Netflix?
One of my first shows that I ever attended as a child was Paul Keene's Douglas. So I know we're very capable of doing what we have to do. The 2 challenges are that, one, Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, these networks that exist aren't going to do it for us, right? And if we just sit around waiting, it's not going to happen, right? So we ourselves have to just, say, hey, we're going to commit to this.
Sure.
But then I think the other challenge is financially, because you know that more than likely in doing it, right, what's going to happen? You're going to, make a loss probably on your first attempt.
I see.
Fortunately, when you make enough losses, you kind of figure out, wait a second. Yeah, exactly.
But I'm with you.
They got fooled into that loan. I got them again. But the reality though is that in this particular situation, no, I think that we're going to do well, but we're going to do well not because it's just Donnell participating, but because we have great local stand-ups that will prove themselves again, and people will start. There's a day when we don't need to just bring in a Donnell, right?
Of course.
It's gonna attract its own crowd, right?
Yeah, it's something that I see as a trend in looking into your history too, because you seem to focus not just on us and our domestic market, but what we can represent globally.
Yeah,
it's deliberate in terms of the way you approach business.
You have to. I mean, we live on an island that, as beautiful as it is, and taking into consideration the amount of things that we've accomplished, we're still not globally recognized, right? And people may not like hearing that, but it's the truth, right? It's like me going to Greece and in the streets of Athens, always being asked, hey, where you're from? Because I think we're lovely people, right? We're always friendly. We like talking, whatever, and be like, where you from? And I'm like, Trinidad. And like, Canada? And I'm like, no.
Still.
Still, right? So it's a situation in which I want to change that. And I want to change that through being able to create product that we can export, so that it's not just a matter of great music, but it's in all facets of what we do, be it in arts, fashion, music, dance, theater, so that's why I'm so interested and invested in that, because I think that we have a lot of work to do, but it's not impossible. We just have to start working together.
Gotcha. Yeah, that might be a challenge, is what you're saying.
That's probably the impossible part right there.
Yeah, really.
Yeah,
I want to come back to that, but in terms of you going out to somebody like Netflix, like somebody like me who creating a product, I just don't know how. So when you casually say, I produced a movie with Donald Rollins before, it's like, how do you get to those spaces, and how do you get those meetings?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it really comes down to believing in yourself and just knowing that it's not what you know, but who you know.
Right.
And so over the 25 years of me doing this, I've always looked for angles in something. I'll give you an example because I think a lot of times people don't understand what it is to look for an angle. So there was a time in which I would go to LA, right? LA is like a stomping ground for me. I worked there.
Right.
You know, in fact, my formative years in entertainment, we're working with Boys to Men and their managers, right? And Janet Jackson managers, John Dukakis and Quadriel Amin.
Right.
So that's where I got my start. And so going back to LA over the years and building these relationships, you know, there was a time when I used to love clubbing, going out and enjoying myself with other friends, etc.
As the LA club scene?
As the LA club scene. But the LA club scene is all a list system.
Gotcha.
Right? So to get into those places, you need to be on the list. And, you know, looking at who I am and where I came from, that wasn't an easy prospect. And I'm not a talent, right, in that sense. So what I discovered one day was I'm just very observant. I stood up outside the club and I noticed there was always this guy who would come and whisper something into the bouncer's ear, and the bouncer would be like, all right, you. Right? And that person will get in. So I went and asked the bouncers, like, you know, is that the club owner, manager? Because I'm immediately thinking, right, I have a bottle of Angostura rum in the car. Maybe I could give it to them or whatever, right? So he's like, no, that's the bartender. I was like, oh, that's interesting. So then on another event back home in Trinidad, they were like, hey, we want to do something different. And we did, you know, we still do events and coordinate events. So I was like, hey, why don't we bring some bartenders out of LA, you know, and let them, you know, serve drinks. They'll do it flair and they'll do it a little bit differently, whatever. And they were like, they were sold on that. So I looked for all the top clubs, right? I brought in 3 or 4 bartenders from those top clubs.
Right.
And so after we did the event and they had a great time, I went back to LA.
You connected.
I could get anybody in, right? You know, so now I'm walking past celebrities, right, who are just stuck on the outside, and you know, it's like, how is this person getting in? Like, you know,
now they're curious about you.
Now they're curious about me, right? But again, it's just really angles. You have to figure out what's the play, right, in order for you to be able to move to that next level. You know, it's not that I'm smarter than anyone else. It's not that I have more money than anyone else. It's just about observing, and through that observation process, you're like, oh, okay, wait, I think I know how to beat the system.
Yeah, that's a hell of an angle.
Yeah.
And my mind would tell me when they say bartender, I might have give up right there. But it's and you brought in bartenders sort of as talent, because maybe at that time here, bartenders was just whoever you get to serve drinks. It's not.
This is mid 2008, 2009, around there, I guess you could say it was.
Right.
So it was a time, not that we didn't have good or great bartenders. It was just that, you know, I was playing my hand and, hey, maybe this is something that could work.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
And it doesn't always work.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So some of them early days, like, because you're saying you were in LA and so on, you grew up right here, you were home?
Oh, yeah. Born and bred. I grew up in, I was just laughing, right? Because there's a sort of stigma sometimes attached to these places you grew up in.
Yeah.
I grew up in Valsayn.
Okay.
Right? But to be clear, I grew up in the Valsayn that was swampland.
Valsayn with a caveat.
Valsayn was like swampland and then they drained it. Right? My parents moved from Trinity.
Right.
You know what I mean? I have to explain to the audience, right? My father is from Cora, my mother from Tunapuna.
I get you.
Right? So before anyone starts,
it's not this Valsayn.
It's not this Valsayn, right? That Valsayn is a different kind of Valsayn, right? And I love it for who it is and what they are, but you know, now it's a different time, man.
And schools, where you went to school and so?
I went to school, Trinity, right? Which, I mean, I have to tell you, man, like, that was the best experience ever. Best experience ever.
Here we go.
Like, listen, I came out of Murray Regina, right? Because my parents are publishers, and because my dad was the editor-in-chief of the Catholic News, he was able, angles.
Of course.
Right? He was able to get me in Murray Regina, which was this prestigious, you know, school, of course, But at Murray Regina, I was very young. I was 10 years old when I took common entrance back then.
Right.
And so they were like, oh, well, you could do over here. And I went to Trinity thinking, hey, well, you know, I'll you know, I don't want to stay back with those other guys that, you know what I mean, that was torturing. So anyway, so I go to Trinity, and I have to tell you, man, that was such a beautiful learning experience, because if you ever think like you know, there's a kind of level of thinking you develop, I think, in schools that are curated in a certain way, and Trinity was real, right? Like they were experiences that allowed me to grow and mature as a human being, and you learn to appreciate, right? Like I think that there is a level of appreciation that at that age, you're picked on at first, right? But then you learn how to defend yourself as well, right? Like in terms of just becoming mentally sharp and things like that. And just the system, a lot of really bright, outstanding youth and talent. And man, I'm
from Trinity?
Yeah.
That's the first I am.
But I mean, I think I would have been a different human being altogether if I went to, my father and brother went to CIC. And I just feel like if God didn't want me to go on that path, and I went a different path that allowed me to become much more grounded.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense. It's not that I'm saying that
St. Mary's,
No.
I mean, if you're being honest.
I've, you know what I mean? Love for all my friends in St. Mary's and who went there. But no, it's just that for me, it's what I needed.
Gotcha. It makes sense. It makes perfect sense.
So yeah.
And then you're studying business subjects, science. What are you doing in school then?
So I was always business and arts.
Since then.
Loved history, loved literature.
Right.
I think that's in my blood too, journalism. And so I then went to University of Miami.
I see.
Right. And at University of Miami was where I really started, there's so many things that happen to you on a different level. Like we know it from where we live on an island and what we enjoy and what it is that we experience.
Right.
But at university, and specifically living in the States, there are things that happen to you that really just flips that in such a way that you really start identifying or doing things differently. So beyond all the great experiences I had at university, it was also the first time I had dealt with racism in such different ways, right? Like, sun blasting, 3-4 in the afternoon, just jogging around campus and being stopped by the police to be asked what you doing here.
Is that campus police and stuff or regular police?
No, this is regular police. Yeah. No, but I mean, it's not to say that there are a lot of good things that happen.
Of course,
but those things that happened that were somewhat negatively impactful in a way also grew you to understand the world that you live in. Because the things that wouldn't have happened in Trinidad per se, right? Like,
of course, you wouldn't experience
but the things that happened there really started making you see things like, this is what the real world can really be like. Where, because although I do think that there's a lot of division in terms of politics and what we have down here, which is just absolutely foolish and just downright atrocious, right?
Agreed.
The reality is that, we really grew up loving one another.
And
right?
even as one, it's just
as one,
yeah. It's funny because a lot of people who study abroad, you might be the 5th or 6th person who said almost exactly that.
Right.
That there's that eye-opening of what is seen as when you go into these spaces.
Absolutely.
So you benefited from navigating that and just understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. Because now you start to recognize that the world isn't as protected and insulated as what we have here, right? Which makes us beautiful as well, right? Like there are things, I always try to look for the beauty in who we are and what we represent from a Caribbean standpoint. And of course, those differences also extended to that the African American experience and the Black or people of color experience in the Caribbean are two different things. We've always grown up knowing what it is to have a person of color, let's say, as a leader.
Of course.
Right?
They may not have that.
They may not have
They certainly didn't have it.
Up to the time, I went to university, there was no Obama. Right?
Of course.
So there wasn't that there as well, right?
Yeah.
So there were a lot of things that I think we benefited from, that they were still dealing with, right? There's this sort of like cage that sort of exists in the States, right?
You still see it now, eh? Like I see that discussion between Black Americans or foundational Black Americans versus Caribbean people. And there's different experience. So much we could learn from each other.
Yeah.
But as you brought up Obama, it's so funny. Like my little brother, he lives in LA now. He studies film scoring.
Right.
And I remember when Obama was elected, me and my father, now we halfway in tears watching this thing and Jesse Jackson in tears. And my little brother then might be 4, 5, 6 years old.
Right.
And we call him, he's like, Jonathan, come, look at Black man president. He said, that is what you call me for? And that always stood out to me. Because he born into a world where we might carry a lot of that thing where all the leaders in the States are white or world leaders are white. But as far as he's concerned, it's like, man, I'm busy. You come to see some man, I don't care about it. And even the way you see him navigating these spaces now, because he went to school in the States and he had some of that experience, so maybe he understands it, but it's just unique to see how the perspectives change over time.
Yeah, and again, time is the one factor that allows us to change, right? and because we have to adapt, we have to understand what's going on.
Yeah,
there's so many different pieces to that, you know. So
what you went to study in Miami? Where you went for university?
Well, I studied. I came out with a Bachelor of Science in Communications. I majored in motion pictures and history, and I did minors in business and theater. I can't really remember.
So arts and business. That's it. It stayed with that.
Yeah,
I understand.
Yeah, pretty much.
So your exposure starting from there in terms of, because when you're talking about producing films and stuff, you trained in this.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I mean, most of your training, sad to say, really happens when you're on set. You know,
I guess.
You could spend 4 years there. You're not going there for the 4 years for that reason. I'll tell you why you're going there for the 4 years. One, because you want to impress your parents.
Of course, you have to get out.
Your parents want to be able to say to auntie and uncle, well, you know, my son ended up graduating and
he's studying in Miami.
So you do it. I kind of see it differently now. It's like, oh, I'm really going to university for you.
Right.
And I think you're also going for the worldly education in the sense of, you know, you're dealing with groups of people that you never dealt with before. Up to the point that I went to university, as an example, I'd never had, let's say, Jewish friends, right? Like I didn't know what that was, you know. But I mean, you know, to be quite honest, right?
Yeah.
But then the idea of being able to understand them, their culture, things like that, you know, and of course it's just different mindsets, right? And you get into arguments and debates, and so I looked at it as really a school of thinking, right? Because now coming out of it, I could appreciate certain things, cultures, you know, what people have gone through a little bit more than just being here, you know.
It makes sense. It makes sense.
So,
it's adding up, in terms of the way you approach some of these things. You could see that where some of that international drive comes from, because a lot of again, looking at your work, there's that global feel to it. And again, most of the people who sit here who've achieved a lot tend to look at not just the 1-point-something million here or the 7 million in diaspora or whatever it might be, or Caribbean, but what's happening abroad. Yeah. So at that point in time, you're graduating university, you're looking at working. What you're trying to do then? You're looking for a job.
Well, I was always working, right? Because part of it was, you know, you're trying to earn extra disposable income, right? You know, so I'd done, at that point, man, I tried all these different things. I worked in a camera rental facility where I thought I was going to learn about cameras. What I learned was how to clean the boxes that the cameras went into.
Yeah, good information.
I did a few jobs on set where I would work as the production assistant, you know, like those sort of things. And then I moved out to LA, started working there too. But
what caused you to move to LA at the point? Just
Hollywood was where it was at. Like everyone believed in the dream, you know, more so back then than they do now, where people are running from Hollywood, right? You know, but back then it was about going to Hollywood. But our challenge, especially being not from their country, we're not residents, we're not citizens. I have one passport, and I'm proud to have one passport, right? But that being said, you know, I was under this form of work permit where if I didn't have a steady job, right, I would have to leave, right? Because the company has to sponsor you. I think back then it was like H1 visas. Like it was a whole different kind of ball game. And so a friend of mine called and said, hey, I know you're doing these sort of like you're running on set doing production assistant work. And I was doing just wherever I could go and do work within movies, I was trying to find it, right? So they were like, a position is opening up at this company that's growing. It's an entertainment company, you know. And so I went in, I met with the manager, you know, and John Dukakis, who I learned a lot from, right? Did the bamboozling part of it, right? Like, hey, because, it's like, oh, university student, right? Just ready to go, but, and I was like, hey, I'm doing motion pictures. He's like, yeah, but, we're going to do that soon. Boys to Men, we're going to go into, we're going to go into film. We're going to do those things. They never did, but the fact was, I was like, oh, okay. He said all the right things.
Of course, yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the things I started learning very, very early. Right?
The angles.
This is a game of, if you have to get what you want, you sometimes you're going to sell the dream.
Understood.
Right?
Understood.
So you're selling the dream to the person, and you sell it to the person you're trying to do business with, the person you're trying to work with,
makes sense.
the artist or the talent. You're selling the dreams.
Gotcha. So what was he interested in a film student for like videos and stuff?
Work. No.
Assistant.
No, assistant work. Come on, man. Are you true? Yeah, pull here.
I don't buy the dream already.
No. Don't try to elevate me beyond where I need to go.
I got you.
No. I mean, listen, come on. I was fresh out of university, right? A lot of these companies, whether they were CAA, right, HBO, right, it didn't matter. They wanted young blood who would come in. They're just ready. They're just like, go-getters, right? And they'll do all the crap you fed to them. You know what I mean? But I learned certain tricks in that trade early. Like, for example, there are things I didn't like doing. And you'd be like, oh, make me a coffee. Because you're an assistant.
Sure.
Get accustomed, right? You're an assistant. So I deliberately learned how to make the worst coffee in the world.
So they could get to stop.
Yeah. Please, is there something else you can do? Yeah. So then I graduated from that to reading through contracts. Like and just sending it out like agreements to different promoters and things like that or whatever, So it saved me from one meaningless task, and it gave me a task that was just pure. It'd keep you in the office, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. But then I just started, reading through all the documents. John's probably not going to be happy to hear that right now.
But you learn probably.
But that's how, you learn, right? You're like, you inundate yourself with all those different things, right? And just like, just flooding all the information.
Yeah. I'd ask you because LA is real expensive. So at that point in time, you're getting paid enough, you could sustain yourself out there.
Well, it's funny. Back then, I'm trying to remember. So this is basically, I know, sorry to say this to you guys, but if you can guess by now. So this is the mid-90s.
Okay.
Right? So this is a situation in which I was getting maybe about $2,500 to $3,000 US a month, which was really good.
Yeah, I could do that
then, right? Back then, right? But the reality is, when you're living in those places, it's pretty expensive, and you get caught up in the lifestyle, right? I mean, so you want to emulate the very peers in your office who are kind of like very, they're gonna demonstrate that too, and so all of a sudden, the stuff that really should be there that you're earning that can go into savings, do things or whatever. Because you're trying to match up,
of course,
right?
Of course,
to what is out there.
Yeah.
You come out of it realizing. So what ended up happening was I left LA and I came back to Trinidad for a couple of weeks. It was just supposed to be a vacation, and I think at that time I spent more than a year and a half. With the entertainment company. And I was just like, I was so unhappy with myself, man. I just, for the first time, without that rat race of just running around doing things, everyone thinks you're glorious because the group that you work for, that probably doesn't even know your name, right? But, sold 25 million albums or whatever. And we were getting free stuff all the time. So they were saying, that's the other great thing about working in these companies, right? Like, when your artist rises, and you learn that when any artist that rises, all of a sudden, Reebok, Nike, they're all sending you free things, right?
Nice.
And most of the time, I don't even think they really reach in the hands of the artist. So it's
I guess,
the assistants are like, ooh.
Nice. Yeah, I'm a size 10.
Right? So, Sean or whoever from the group will come in like, oh, nice shoes. These were your shoes, Sean. But I'm glad you like them. But no, man, it was a fun time, learning times. But I guess what I'm getting at is when I came back home, I really started realizing how shallow of a person you can become in an environment that fosters it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like I saw that nightlife scene in LA. So it's just a little plastic.
Yeah.
And I guess it's about
absolutely.
that opulent. You have to show that you're doing well to do well. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, it may have changed now, but back then the first question is, what do you do for a living?
Yeah, I hear
And
that.
if you gave the wrong answer,
that conversation done. Yeah.
they were out.
So at that point, you're trying to find back that joy in
I
Trinidad.
think trying to find back who I was, because you get so tied up in everyone else's world, right? And you're like, well, who am I really?
Right.
And so fortunately, I did I quit my job. I did a stint at the Inter-American Development Bank where I helped develop some programs there for youth
Like
and
what?
media
What kind of
related
programs?
network, which was like a television show that allowed us to go and discover youth, but also give them a platform in which they can be seen. We created a deal at the time with the Trinidad Express so that we could also bring out like a monthly newspaper on youth.
Right.
You know, so we try to do things
That's
that were
through the
different.
IDB?
That was through the IDB at the time.
Okay, so how you know the IDB looking for people to do these kind of things? It's just advertise it and you apply? Or?
I honestly, man, I can't remember what I did yesterday.
Yeah, because
You
when I
trying
see
to ask me what I did.
IDB, I don't think that at all. Because I'm trying to figure out whether career party going on, but you're doing the same thing in their context.
I think in terms of the IDB in that particular situation, Frank Maresca was the person who ran the IDB at the time and was very much probably one of the few IDB guys then that was like, no, let's try to do something different. And I can't remember how the call came out. It may have been because someone in the IDB knew what I had done in terms of my work with, abroad. And it was just like a referral, and that's probably how it came up. But I think the beauty of getting into that situation was I started discovering the kind of talent that we had.
Okay.
Right? And fortunately, Kiskadee Caravan had done a lot of the work. I mean, credit to those guys. They really discovered and nurtured talent. And it's such a shame that we don't know how to keep shit going. Right? Like we always find a way
like
to...
name it. There's a finite time. You could say Synergies Orchestra, you could say Kiskadee, you could say Party
I don't know
Time.
what... I don't want to say it's a curse, but man, we struggle. We start up some, brand new thing in a sport, and then everyone's happy with it. And then 3 weeks later, the guys who partnered on it decide that, one wants to start their own thing. Like, I don't know where that comes from. But essentially through it, though, I ended up discovering talent by the name of Precious, Magadan, and Diamond Cut.
Oh,
right? Oh, and there was also another guy, of course, called Super Child.
Oh, of course.
Right? So I started working with those guys, and we formed a group called Tribe. This was before the band Tribe. So Dean.
Right,
you know. You know what I mean? But anyway, a totally different type of band. Right? And I just went back to doing the things that I used to do, looking for angles. So we got Dwayne Sumal, I think he was called D Squared or D3, I can't remember all these nicknames. He used to work for Biggie Smalls and all these guys or whatever. And Danny Brownie, right, got involved as well. And I can't really remember the chronology of all these things, but before I started managing them fully, meaning Precious and right, Magadan, who became Maximus Dan, who became MX Prime, I took up an opportunity to work with Danny Brownie in Jamaica at Main Street Records.
So Danny Brownie is from where? He's Trinidad?
Jamaican.
Jamaican, okay, good.
Jamaican. I believe I interviewed him as part of Network because he was handling an artist called Red Rat.
Oh, right,
at the time. And Red Rat broke out with this song, Shellyan, right? That, of course, was a global hit. So how we would work out, and I was just again fortunate to be mentored by someone like Danny at the time, who was really an incredible, just an amazing producer, right? And he took me under his wing. I ended up doing like special projects for them. I went on tour with them, created our first documentary, filming them. And it was probably the first representative documentary of dancehall artists going, around the world.
Right.
So in Japan, Africa, UK.
Yeah, that's when they had kind of Main Street crew and things like that.
Yeah. Oh, the whole Main Street crew.
Right.
Oh, it was just such a beautiful time in music too, right?
Oh, yeah, different time.
But it also gave me the opportunity to create situations that were workable situations for our artists back home. So, Precious ended up doing some tracks with some Hawkeye and some other artists. Magadan put out a single, on one of Danny's rhythms.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of the rhythm now, but...
Yeah. It's just, time.
Of course.
Actually, it was the same rhythm with Heads High.
Yeah.
With Vegas.
Yeah, and I could almost remember the song,
Yeah. Do you see what I see?
Yeah,
the
it was
track that
bubbling and all right.
Yeah, right. So we were doing things, but I think that stems from the fact that I was never scared of trying something different in that respect, right? Professionally, it was like, I have to lose. It's either gonna work or not work, and then just get up again.
Yeah.
and so that was how my career really started taking a turn, because with John and Quadri, I learned the office side of things, right? Contractual law, how to deal with people. I listened to all those conversations, so I really got an idea of what that was.
Right.
And then when I worked for Main Street, I really understood what it was like to go out on the road and deal with a completely different sort of personality, because we didn't have those sort of personalities. These were stars, huh? When
people forget about Red Rat.
No, listen. When we went to Uganda, went to Uganda with Red Rat. At the time, I'm talking about from the airport to Entebbe, I think, which is the city center. Right? That must have been, I want to say it was 45 minutes to an hour. And what made it so long was because the streets were lined with people on both sides to see Red Rat. So he would stick out his head like Michael Jackson and wave. This stuff you can't make up. It was just glorious, right?
Yeah.
Witnessing this thing. And then, of course, there was this kid. This is like, it would have been a meme today. This kid literally ran from the airport following us all the way. This is a 20-mile track. This kid does this, right? But it shows you how our Caribbean music is so powerful, right?
Yeah,
and how it touches the very heartstrings, right? Pulls in the heartstrings of people. So when I had that experience at Danny, and and Main Street, and I came back to Trinidad, I was like, man, I want to create that here. That was really where it all started for me in music. I wanted to create that here.
So you didn't feel like you should just, for me, hearing this, I'm not sure that I coming back here. You got nothing out. You always had that wanting to come home to do it?
I think, home is home, man. You have to love the place and what you do, and it's the people, and, so home is home.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I would have worn that Trinidad t-shirt with the Trinidad thing on it, but it got too tight. Put on too many pounds, so I can't wear that anymore. But I would say that, yeah, man. I mean, there's a deep love for here, and that I think is why I never left. Like I could have. I mean, there were job offers, there were people interested in what it was that I was doing, and every now and then I'm reminded by someone who has. When I say made it, right? I don't think that I haven't made it, but someone who's really broken, past those walls that we set for ourselves or whatever.
Right.
That would call me and be like, man, I've just got nominated for this Academy Award. You could have been here right alongside me. What are you doing? Why don't you come here and work? So I've gotten those calls too. But in the end, Trinidad and the Caribbean as a whole, I want to be a leader who can champion for us on globally on that path. on that platform.
I'm with you. And the same way people mightn't remember Red Rat. I mean, people know when they say Red Rat, they had to Google that, just an era.
Yeah.
But Precious was one who shoots out like a rocket too.
Oh, man.
That first single,
So
Precious,
talented.
that was,
So talented, let me tell you. She could do everything from R&B to hip hop to dancehall, right? I mean, and was so fluid. And here was this, this, and some of the stuff that she wrote was so raw. And I'm like, I know you've been locked at home, right? You know what I mean? How are you coming up with these things? And this is before really the internet had that sort of impact on us, right? Social media.
Yeah, all the experiences outside them days. You had to be outside.
And but she was writing like a very mature artist, and I was like, this is scary, But we have so much talent here, man.
Yeah.
So much talent. It's just crazy.
At that point, you're seeing yourself as a career in talent management because you do talent management, production, film, events. You do a lot of different things. At that point, you're seeing it as that's where you want to go.
Well, I think it started off with events.
Right.
So I ended up getting to business, and she's still my business partner today, Carolyn Paget, right? She is sort of that person where if I come with an idea, she has that machine gun and bazooka ready to shoot it down.
Okay, good.
Right?
Oh, down. Yeah. I thought you can shoot it off.
Oh, no. She's ready to be like, here are all the holes in this and why it won't work.
I like that.
Then I'd be like, damn you, Carolyn, I'm going to do it anyway. And then it fails and I'm like, oh man, I'm just giving her more ammunition. You know what I mean? But you need someone like that.
Of course.
And I think the thing with management, I balance between management and doing events because I had an equal love for both, a passion for both. And the fact is that what I discovered, is that with an event, something's going wrong, you could curse out your employees, say, oh man, what the shit you doing, whatever. Like, you could literally get into it with them. And because they know, right, that they're getting paid through this event and this event has to succeed and we have to do the right way. And they did these things. You can't really adopt that attitude with artists.
Yeah, I guess.
Right? Right? But I had this sort of like, there's a time when Kes used to call me Ari from the show Entourage, right? Because I would throw bottles, I would do the whole, the whole nine. But the fact is that, that personality that existed, right? Especially back then in terms of how, I would deal with artists was because I just wanted them to be the best of what they could be, and I felt like I could either baby and nurture you in this process or I could tell you you're doing crap. What eventually happens is that there are a lot of things that happen in relationships, right? But I think that for the most part with artists, they don't really want to be told when they're doing something wrong. At some point, they just want to hear the yes men, right? Like, oh yeah, great, and being resilient to things could create its own problems, right?
But that could be dangerous, no? If you just have people who go and you see it with artists in every genre where you just insulate yourself.
It happens because I think what eventually happens is the person who's collecting the paycheck doesn't want to screw with the paycheck.
I guess.
You know what I mean? It literally comes down to, yes, sir. Oh, whatever you say, sir. You know what I mean?
But you're not talking about that. You tell them.
I'll cuss you out. I don't care. I don't care who you think you are.
So don't feel run out of talent. What you going to do if you chase the talent?
No, but I mean, listen, the reality is, what bar are you setting for yourself? Right? Because I guarantee you, even and take athletes, because I look at it as the best profession in terms of understanding how you win a gold medal, right? Like, you have to train hard. You have to, hear that coach telling you, look, this is not working. This is what you have to do. You have to do it. And sometimes the coach going to be wrong too. It's literally what happens, right? Sure. We're not going to get everything right. But, it's a tough job. And I think time, like all relationships, time has that effect where it's like, when you have your girlfriend, and one day you get up, I'm not saying this has ever happened with me, right? But one day you get up, right? And you're like, God, how am I still with you? Right? And you're like, God, how am I still with you? Right? And you're like, God, how am I still with you? Right? And you're like, God, how am I still with you? Right? And you're like, God, how am I still with you? Right? And you're like, God, how am I still with you? Right? And you're like, God, how am I still with you? Right? And you're like, God, how am I still with you? I think that's literally what happens sometimes with talent and management.
I guess. I guess
You know
it's
what I
either you
mean?
get close or you part ways.
Oh yeah. It's gonna happen, man. Like like Scooter Braun.
Yeah, boy.
You know that dude, right? Look, like all the things he's done, no one's gonna remember.
Yeah, boy.
I mean, I don't mean that in a bad way, Scooter, but I mean that's.
Also, you know him too.
No, I don't.
Okay, all right, just checking in because the list is.
But in case I ever, you know what I mean?
It's probably likely.
You have to prepare for that with social media.
Likely based on everything I see with you so far. So, question mark, when you all started it as a event management company, or what was your vision then?
Oh yeah, most definitely. I think at the time we really couldn't see. No one can predict the future in terms of artist management. So there had to be something that was going to pay the bills, right? So we started off with it. But the way that it came about in terms of doing events and how that worked out is actually pretty funny. We were working at a time with Orange Sky. Nigel is never going to forgive me for relaying this story. But Nigel Rojas was one of the most undeniable talents. And to this day, I think he's definitely that, right? But the fact is, back then, he was a rock star.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think the problem was Nigel knew he was a rock star, right? So the fact of the matter is, man, just listen, I can't take anything away from him, right, in terms of who and what he was. But there was a point in which, you know, we were supposed to go abroad with Nigel and do a showcase with them in LA. And what really got us into events is I have to thank Nigel for that. Because Nigel, you know, for whatever reasons, I think a lot of it had to deal with trust issues, right? He didn't want to sign a contract with us. And we were like, we're not going to invest unless we sign a contract. Because our fear was, you know, we take this incredible talent to LA, they get signed, and then they leave us.
Of course.
Right? And for all that hard work and everything that you've done, you don't see anything from it.
Sure. So
when that impasse happened and we parted ways because of the differences in opinion, right? We essentially, Carolyn and I sat down and was like, well, you know, we've already raised this money and we were going to use on this trip. What do we do now? And that's when we invested in Decibel. Decibel became our real first flagship event.
Right.
And we brought in Carmi Electra, who at the time, we didn't know it. We knew she was kind of like red hot in terms of stuff that she was doing, but then she went into that deal with MTV. She started doing movies.
Oh, I see. It would have been just before that.
It was just before that, on the cusp.
Right.
And that was what really broke out our names into the business. Because once that happened, it was like Question Mark Entertainment was this big thing. And I was like, that was just timing.
Yeah, really?
It was just timing.
What was the response to that when you put out? Trinidad responded?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, naturally we have this thing of we gravitate towards what's hot, right?
Yes.
But then once she came on, she spoke after the first 30 seconds.
That was
no one gave a shit.
Oh, there's it. Well, I guess the event succeeded already. Yeah.
We're on the stage now. Who's the next act?
Yeah. Trinidad pay money.
Within 30 seconds, it was like, it's over. But we had established ourselves at that point, right? Like, it was like, oh, they fulfilled it.
Right, yes, of course.
But there's a funny story to that. And that is that at the time, Carmen, right, her manager, whose name I can't remember, decided that because of her fame and popularity, right, they got a movie deal and they wanted to cancel on us.
Okay.
So at this point, right, like, you know, this is the point where
You're gonna be Valmont Jones.
like you're literally, you know, crying, you know, adopting the fetal position, right? Because this is make or break.
Yeah,
like your name
already.
is going to be destroyed at this point. So they were doing everything in their power to make sure she didn't come to Trinidad. And so in a conversation with me, she said something to the effect like, basically, what you're gonna do? You're Trinidadian. We're in Hollywood. What are you gonna do? We fortunately made a connection with an attorney who would eventually go and represent a band called Evanescence, right? That had a hot hand with one track. And this guy, for whatever reason, he took to us. He really liked us, and I explained what happened. He was like, "Look, the reality, she's right. There's really nothing you can do. And I sat down and I said, can we bluff? He's like, hey, bluffing is all part of the game, right? So we called her back and she started, I didn't introduce him right away on the phone, right? I know this may sound a little seedy to you guys, but they were going to mess with the Trini first, right? Yeah. So then she said something to the effect was like, yeah, you all can't do anything about it. And I was like, well, look, sorry, I'm going to introduce on the phone. I have, right, the gentleman. And she's like, what? I was like, well, you thought we were dealing with our attorney down here, but no, we have an attorney in LA. And then his credentials were pretty impressive at the time. So immediately she asked for a call separately with him, called him and said, we're Americans, we're in this thing together.
Oh, nice.
That's the angle. And he's like, I'm not your kind of American. I always respected him for that, right? And then, essentially she went with it, but they made it very difficult for us. We had to, do this crazy flight pattern, get her in, 8 hours later on a plane out, things like that, just really, it makes you think twice about going into events and event management.
It didn't make you think twice, clearly.
When you win, you tend to be like, you think you're invincible at this point, like, oh, I could win again.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, it's when you lose, you start thinking.
That's the fetal position for it. So coming off of that experience, I know like one of the concerts we talk about as youth and Fatima, all of us coming up, one of the first concerts I remember was that CNC Music Factory.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's one of my first memories. I remember Boyz II Men being here. There was an era when those big shows were coming.
Yeah, so, well, that takes a step back because that's before I went to university, right?
Oh, that was before?
Yeah. CNC Music Factory, the Boys was in 1991.
Right.
And so essentially, we had come out of a very difficult and challenging time for the country with the coup.
Right.
And so again, we knew people. Well, me personally, as well as others would have known some of the very young men who would have participated in the coup. And I think at the time we were just like, we wanted to do something where we could start talking to our youth, really, trying to figure out what it is that, what was the connection, and it was through music, and that's where I really got my first connection to music.
Right, gotcha. So what was your involvement in it?
Oh, man. I was the lead person for Youth Fest, right? This is where nepotism actually came into play. My dad, at the time, he was the GM of the Express, right? And so he had this whole idea of, how can we, do something? And I guess, father to son, he was like, hey, I want to put you on this thing. I want you to do it, whatever it is. So we started this thing where we essentially introduced a lot of people who were not before involved in entertainment, got very involved in entertainment after that, right? Whether you're talking, I'm just trying to think of names, man, because there's so many. Yeah. I know Brian might support me in this because I think it was the first chance for them to test the radio station, right? They did like a youth radio station there. Stephen Dubal, was very involved in Youth Fest as well. Stephen Mahue, right, who eventually went to a lot of club type stuff and promotional type things. I remember we worked with Tony Chowlin when he was still Chinese Laundry, and we had Signal to Noise, right. Marshall, performed at the event as well at Youth Fest. It was the first time I've seen a crowd of youth get somewhat agitated. We had, I think it was Second Image came before Image and Company.
Yeah, Second Image was first.
Second Image was first, right? Second Image was first. And Second Image, I will never forget, Second Image decided to do a rock song.
Right.
And within 5 to 7 seconds, that rock song was cut from the set.
Yeah.
Because the amount of things that were thrown on that stage, it immediately changed the whole atmosphere. But listen, I mean, again, all these were great groups at the time, very, very talented individuals who participated. And I, for one, really had such a love for it. And then, of course, Freedom Williams came on with CNC Music Factory. And then like 20,000 plus people, at the stadium witnessing this thing. And essentially, there was this euphoria that you get like as a promoter. Like, my God, I know these were my ideas. We did it for the first time on a Sunday, right? It was Sunday, May 5th,
right?
I think it was, right? And essentially, yeah, man, it was just one of those amazing things because it was before the typical thing that promoters did that, it was like the safe things, Maxi Priest, oh gosh, I'm trying to remember this group. Rhythm's Gonna Get You.
Aswad. I remember them days.
No. Gloria Estefan. Gloria Estefan. Like, it's just, it's like we'll take a chance on these things. So I think it was the first time, I can say that safely that it was like, hey, we're going to take a risk on this.
Yeah, because when you look at your bio, for instance, the international acts, and not internet, Maxi Priest is international, right? But closely connected to Trinidad. There's music playing here.
Yeah.
It's reggae. We like it. We know Maxi Priest.
It was safe spaces.
If you come, safe spaces, right?
Yeah.
But I thinking that in your travels to LA and the connections you made, you bring in people like them. But this is even before then. You kind of had that. Why you all identify CNC? Is just because it's the hottest thing then?
No, so we had, again, it's observation, right? So we would get Billboard magazines, which would tell us that, oh, this is number one on the chart. But back, I don't know if you remember, you're young, but back in those days, right? Damn it. Right? My old ass on your program. But back in those days, right? Billboard would bring out their chart. So their number one track or number two, whatever, right, would still not be number 20 or 21 on our charts.
Right.
So I'm like, I'm Nostradamus. I can predict the future, right? Because I'm looking at this thing and I'm like, oh, wait. So what ended up happening was we got in touch with a guy called Dan Barnett at Cellar Door Booking Agency. And I remember my dad driving me. I was 17 at the time. What the hell am I doing? And anyway, he drove me to Fort Lauderdale where Cellar Door was located.
Right.
And they had done all these amazing concerts and festivals. And Dan Barnett was like, the guy there. And we talked to him about doing an event. So we were originally going with CNC Music Factory.
Right.
And then we switched to En Vogue, right? And I realized, no, this CNC thing is hot because they had a second song that came on, right? I was like, okay, right? So I'm just predicting future at this point, right? So that's how we ended up getting CNC Music Factory. It wasn't like the connection was Dan Barnett at Cellar Door. But to find these people,
that's what I think.
You just have to be very. Let's cut to Wild on E, right? Or even the MTV show that we brought in, right? How did that happen? At the time, I recorded on a VHS tape the credits for Wild on E show, right? And then saw who the names were for the producers, because right? Wrote them down, right? Called E, asked to speak to each one of them. And then eventually I got one person, got the email at the time, right? And then officially wrote them, right? And they were like, well, we could come to Trinidad if you could make these things happen.
Right.
And it was the same thing for MTV. It was like, we can come to Trinidad if you can make these things happen. And so we flew the guy in, Justin Booth, the supervising producer at the time for the MTV show. He comes in. I remember at the time, Dean Atkin, myself, Avinash, and Alsing, I think it was, we all met with this guy. And Dean was like, Simon, I don't know, yes, but I have this thing that I'm going on right now and I got to really pursue this thing. I'm like, you sure, boy? He was sure. He was sure. But we were sure about what we were doing too, until we got a call from the guy who's like, nah, Trinidad's not the place.
Yeah.
So he goes to Puerto Rico. This is how God works in mysterious ways, and sometimes violently. Yeah. Goes to Puerto Rico, right? And he ends up leaving a bar, he and his co-producer, right? And they get beat up.
Oh.
Right? And he calls me and says, hey, is that Trinidad thing still available?
You want to get out of there?
Yeah. And I did not hire those guys, just to be very clear. Right? But it just goes to show you,
the
right?
fact that you had to say it didn't says a lot.
Am I that powerful? No. But God.
And what was the MTV show?
It was called The Gauntlet.
Right.
And it was a Real World versus Road Rules challenge.
remember,
Very
yeah.
popular back in the day.
Yeah.
Millions of viewers. And of course, I mean, so everything that has happened is really just risk reward.
So let me ask you this, like between now and back then, because some of the things you say now sound impossible in this era.
Yeah.
Like to call up MTV, I don't know that I could call up Netflix and talk to certain people or get their emails.
Yeah.
I mean, now maybe I could DM people, but I don't expect a response.
Right.
Is it different now, making them connect? Well, now you're properly connected, right? But for somebody who's starting from scratch at 17, can they make them connections now?
Hell yeah, more so than ever. I call it 1 degree of separation, right? Before they used to have 6. Now it's just a click, right? And I think most of the time, what you have to realize is that if you approach it with the mindset that, this is almost impossible for it to happen, then you're right. It's never going to happen for you, right? You really have to approach it with the mindset of, what if I take a shot and they said yes? How do I respond to the yes? What's the follow-up? Because a lot of times people have surprised me and said yes, and I was like, shit, I don't really know what to do next. You know what I mean? I didn't expect you to say yes. You know what I mean? So I think that there's a certain level of bravado and hubris that one needs to have, right? But certainly it is absolutely possible.
Yeah.
You just need to have, what is the follow-up? Because if you can't follow up with that stuff, right, there's a crash and burn involved.
Of course. And I guess those angles on making those connections and networking critical, because in MTV Respond, you have 100 different things that had to happen here.
Yeah.
And so the local network is crucial too.
Yeah, and we were fortunate at the time. The Minister of Tourism, coincidentally, was the same not promoter, owner of a venue that we used to rent.
Nice.
So it
all right.
So it just turned out that I could go to the Minister of Tourism and say, hey, but it wasn't like I had those sort of political connections. It's just the way that life works that those things happen to line up.
But it's a word they keep using of like observation.
Yeah.
And I could see it coming true, because the truth is you could miss that.
Oh yeah.
It's very easy to miss them connections, but I suppose you're thinking about it all the time.
That's the problem. You're always thinking about, what if I could do this, and what if and so that could also drive you a little bit insane, because you're always trying to figure out, like, he's doing that with culture, maybe I can do this as well, or like
you see why I need a business partner. No, I'm starting to see why this is happening here.
Well, I mean, it really is just a matter of, where do you want your vision to go?
Gotcha.
And I think that we're very limited by our vision, especially here.
Right.
Because we're so in love with the idea of being, not everyone, right? But there's a big fish in, a small pond mentality that we're attracted to, we get married to, right?
Yeah.
Like, I know clients that I've worked with that we could have put on a very big stage. And when we created the opportunity for them, they came back and said, no, I don't want to do it. And I'm like, why? And they're like, what if I'm laughed at? What if I'm booed? What if they don't like me?
Yeah.
Right? And these are things that have to be worked out for a lot of people, I guess, because that fear makes them comfortable within the zone.
Yeah, and it's a really human thing. Because that fear of what happens in the next... Marshall said something in an interview one time. He said it's like a video game. He said every time you get past this level, you're starting at the bottom of the next level. You're trying to figure it out and you're trying to get there.
Yeah.
And I saw many examples of it. Like, I remember was it Bob Marley documentary? He was saying that... I think it was Blackwell was his name, who was managing Chris Blackwell, was saying that he went to the group as the Wailers at the time and told them he wanted them to open for Lionel Richie.
Right.
And Bunny Wailer and Peter Tosh was like, boy, he should be opening for we. We're not doing it. And Bob is like, yeah, let me do it. And so that's what you're describing, like things like that, where now it's a big fish here and I control the world here in this space. And now you're asking me to go on a stage and open for somebody who, and there's no Lionel Richie today, there's Lionel Richie when he now wins those sentences.
No, I don't necessarily think that. I think that, artists are always open to the idea of more exposure within this particular market now, which is social media.
Right.
Conscious. I think more of like competition, fear of failure, things like that. You know, like Tessanne was very brave. I mean, to go on The Voice, after she had established herself in a certain manner, etc. I give her and a team, because we had literally just parted ways right before.
Oh, really?
Right? Yeah. Yeah. And I will say that is something where if if you're not careful, it could be a career crasher, right? But hey, there was no one denying that talent, man. And she just went in.
Yeah, and blew it away.
And she was like, I don't care who all you are. And she, in all fairness, it was probably unfair because she had so much experience.
Well, I guess, she's an established artist.
Well, yeah, but at the time, when you think about it, she's performing regularly, she's doing things. And a lot of these other guys may not have had that chance.
Yeah. She's already a star.
Yeah. They didn't know that.
Of course. Well, maybe it's
But
an advantage we could take advantage of more here. So talking about that vision, where we going next in terms of the events? At that point in time, you're just trying to do bigger events, trying to expose us to more artists. Where was it for you all?
Well, I think I reached a point where for events, I started taking a different look at how we created events. So in 2014, right, there were two events that we kicked off almost simultaneously. An event called Tuesday in the Rocks, which was basically a matured version, right, to what we did under the trees at Normandy. Then we would attract about 800 people or so, right?
Right.
And the desire to do something bigger, right, and just establish ourselves within that carnival window, right, was something that everyone saw eye to eye with.
Right.
I can't take any credit for that. That was really a conversation that started between Carolyn, my business partner, and Kess. That's where
by that time, you're managing Kess already.
Oh yeah. We were managing Kess from 2005.
Oh, as early as that.
Yeah, as early as that. So we went through trust me, every single different form of abuse. I remember there was one time, right? These are just funny moments, right? It's not like, look, Kess is an amazing talent, an incredible individual, right? But I have to say, those formative years, there was some funny things going on, right?
Yeah.
I remember being backstage at one event and some guy saying, that's the white Marshall Montano. And Kess probably didn't appreciate that. But the fact of the matter is that, you know what? All those things that we went through, because you look back at it now, and that same person who made that insult probably begging for tickets.
100%.
Right?
100%.
But at the time that you're going through it, man, I feel for artist and team, right? Because we're all, people don't understand that journey, you're already dealing with so much. You're battling family who thinks that you made a wrong choice, right?
Sure.
You're trying to deal with the bank because the bank expects that they don't understand what this hobby is.
Of course.
Right? They don't see it as a career, right? So
they want job letter and salary and these things.
No, none of that is acceptable.
Right.
So we're all building. I'm trying to build a firm that's taken seriously. He's trying to build a career that's taken seriously. And so, through those formative years that are molding you into the type of talent or type of manager that you are, right? I always credit those managers, right? Like those managers and understanding where, it starts from, and, because the ones who kind of come into, a position, right? I'm not mad at them, right?
But it's a different job. I can see what you're saying.
But I think it's reached the point where it's like, yeah, but you didn't have to go through this shit. You know what I mean? Let me get 10% of what you make.
Yeah, of course. Maybe it should be.
Right? But the reality is, look, that is just life. It happens in all forms of things, business and whatever, right? Like, the time to be mad has passed, right? It's a divorce when any artist that you work with, and it's not just me. I'm not the only one who's going through that. I'm sure. I think there are others in Jamaica that I'm close to that I won't call their names, but they've gone through that recently with their artists, right?
Yeah.
But what you have to understand is that from two perspectives. One is that, you're mad because you know what you had to do and the things that you had to do to ensure that it worked. Right? And I think the other part that you're mad at is that you know that, financially speaking, it's the quickest game where you go from 100 to 0 just by someone saying, we're parting ways. Right? So I get it from that perspective. But then I'm like, I'm probably different in the sense that, after you get over that, you realize, but I was here before this, right? And I'm going to be here after this. And what is really important to me? What is it that I'm looking for? What do I want to do? What is it I want to achieve? And then you just, and you take all those lessons learned and you build upon that. Because that ain't quicksand. That's a solid foundation that you've laid down.
Of course.
Right? And then you do other things and then one day I'm back.
Of course, yeah.
Right? But you're doing things that now you love or you enjoy, or it's just a different way that you deal with artists.
Yeah. A couple of things coming out of that, because it's easy to, if I like, let's say Boyz II Men, you describe yourself in a situation where you almost disappearing in the background of what Boyz II Men is.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the best way to do the job.
Yeah.
It's serious that when they come and they fire me tomorrow, nobody don't know who's Corie. And I starting from scratch.
Right.
While you're building the company and building or investing in somebody like Kes or the other artists that you have, you're focused on building your brand and what you all have.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, and the reality is there's so many artists that pass through those doors, man. And so much, like I said, I always talk about the talent.
Right.
So when you look at it, whether it was a Precious or a Maximus, who is now MX, sorry, Cohen Dubois, who we worked with.
That's David's favorite personality.
No, another amazing talent. And I'm very proud of the work we did with him, especially for Soca Monarch when we won that year with Too Real. Full blown, man, just so many. Nadia Batson, right? Some names I just can't remember. And not because
Olatunji, there are some of the young about as well. Yeah.
Amazing talent. With a lot of stories.
That's the thing. So you're talking about people who, I mean, as a fan, right? I'm looking at it from the outside.
Right.
Some of these people you call these real difficult personalities.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I know. Me neither. But there's some people they're talking about who militant, who they see the world the way they see the world, and that's it. I'm not sure that I could convince them of doing anything. So how difficult is that with talent here?
Well, I think, man, look, I'm not afraid to say anything, as I told you on camera or whatever. I mean, but the thing is, you don't embarrass people either, right? But I think what happens is that people can be their own worst enemy. And there's a point where, you're really trying your best to save someone, and you realize that you can't do it for them. They have to.
Yeah, it had to be on my terms. I have to define what is saved for me. So.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? So I think that you're always gonna have personalities that are challenging, and that will challenge you. And sadly, it's not always gonna work out, because I think the problem is that, and the reason why it doesn't always work out, is that your vision is bigger than theirs. Not always, right? And when that happens, and you're trying to push someone into a space that they're not comfortable with, they will tell you, hey, I'm good with second place, I could even deal with third and fourth.
Gotcha.
Right? As long as I just making money. And it's like, okay. But I can't see the world from that angle, because I'm always about, well, forget the money. Let's talk about, what differentiates us, what can take us globally, where people, love and appreciate what we do and how we can make it better. And so I'm a little bit more in tune with that than some artists.
Yeah, that comes through from everything that you say. But when you're dealing with those artists day to day, I suppose artists will come and artists will go, right?
Yeah.
But financially now, if you find me and you see, look, like Precious is a real good example, right? Sorry to go back there, but you're talking about raw talent, very young. Is a significant amount of investment as you as a talent management company will have. The money is one thing, but the time and the energy is another one.
Yeah.
In terms of what you invested in them.
Yeah.
Is it possible for you recoup? Is end up making money? Is it worth it when you look at it spending time with an artist over 15 years of their career?
Well, here's what I'll say to that. I have always, everyone talks about a superpower. Like, my superpower has always been identifying those who have the it factor.
Okay.
Right? Like I literally could be in a room with someone, have a conversation with them, and be able to call Carolyn afterwards and say, yeah, this person, they can break the mold. And I'm pretty on point with that. The problem is that I'm not always the right personality for that person.
Understood.
Right? So like I can take them just so far, but then there's that kind of tug of war, right? Where it's like, no, their beliefs are this way and my beliefs are like that. And so it doesn't work out, And then who knows, they something else happens for them. Look, we were managing Full Blown for a year, right? Because I know what Full Blown always was, right? Just a tremendous amount of talent.
Yeah.
But I mean, in all fairness, those guys have also managed, and they knew what they wanted and where they wanted to go to. So in the end, it didn't work out with us. Not upset at any of that. I just realized that sometimes it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
It's just naturally what it is, right?
Yeah, all mine will end up in cuss outs. You saying this real casually, but because that investment is what I'm thinking about, because I know what it would be. Let me use myself as an example, right? So one of the things I used to pay attention to a lot is when people tell me this is their favorite local podcast.
Right.
I listen to that a lot.
Right.
Because I don't think it's a local podcast. I don't understand what the word local means.
Yeah.
I feel is
it's
a
almost
little bit
derogatory.
It is.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that people deliberate it.
Yeah.
This is why David here, because we have a different way of seeing this. Because David go answer you.
Yeah.
I internalize it and I say, all right, well, we had to work.
Yeah.
We had to work because you don't say Rogan is not your favorite local podcast or Diary of a CEO. So why we had to be? And I would think that somebody who from here should push what we have more than they push Rogan. Why would you advertise Rogan and you advertise what we have here?
Yeah.
But again, when something is raw, you're just not there. It's just a lot of work to do. So I know the time and investment and money that it takes.
Yeah.
And I could do that on my own behalf, but I can't promise I could do that for somebody else and then watch them go to another agency or another manager who then takes 20% of my thing.
Well, it's business, bro. You can't have many hard feelings on what it is. It's
I have hard feelings. I was talking to you.
You can't have it's just business,
right?
You know what I mean? They're going to continue to do well, whoever it is as a client, right? You know, and you're either gonna pray for them, right, or you're going to wallow in some form of disillusionment and just hate. And I'm not going there at all. It's just like, look, man, for any artist that I've worked with, any talent, any person, producer, partner, whatever, I always wish the best.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah, maybe there's a part of you who's like, you slipped up now, right? But I mean, the reality is we're human, right? You're like, I told you, right?
Or you build Tuesday on your rocks and you watch somebody take it and make it Wednesday on your rocks and it's gone and you don't.
Well, I mean, again, it's just, look, hey, the point of life is you live and you learn. You know what I mean? And so the things that you just do differently next time, right? Like, okay, next time I do this, I'll kind of, do it this way. That's what it is. And you teach others too. Yeah. Like, others will come to you for advice and you'll be like, here's what I'm going to tell you right now, right? You best listen.
All right.
You know what I mean? So you kind of do that. But again, look, all power to... Here's the part that I think separates me a little bit. I am so pro Trinbagonian, right? I couldn't care whether you spit in my face, not that I want you to do it, but to know that you've gone out there and you put Trinidad and Tobago on a map globally means that next time I go to Athens in Greece and I say Trinidad, they don't tell me Canada.
Of course.
Right?
Of course.
So there's no problem with that, right? That has to happen, and one of us has to do it, you know? Yeah, you try to be the first person to do it, great. But there's always another lane. If that one didn't work, you look for the other lane, you know?
That's fair. So you brought up Sasanchin and what she did. I saw Olatunji, we touched on him as well. I'm not sure what stage of Olatunji's career you mentioned, but I know he did this thing in England.
Yeah.
And when that was, you were involved then?
That wasn't us.
After?
No. Ola, that's a funny story. And so I actually, all right, so Kes and Question Mark officially parted ways, right? Right before the pandemic. So I always joke, right? Like, I always tell them when I see some of them, right? That's what happens when you mess with Carolyn. Carolyn, when I created the pandemic. I'm convinced she was like, y'all will not tour this year. She just start mixing up this little formula. Bat and iguana.
All right. Be careful with Carolyn.
Be careful with Carolyn. No, man. But the point is that it came at the right time for me, meaning the pandemic, maybe for a lot of us, right? It allowed us to internalize, right? So I ended up really not just wanting to do anything with management. I mean, there were people we talked to and people we tried to help out, but I reached a point where I didn't have that fire. Once, like that had extinguished. Like there's no light there, right, for me in it. And so anyone that I worked with, and sadly for them, I just didn't have that interest. Like I just didn't feel it anymore. And so I ended up, for whatever reasons, I ended up going to Ibiza with my wife and some friends. And I was backstage at David Guetta's event, right? And that was when there was like you
feel it again.
Yeah. I was like, oh man, right? I like this backstage stuff. Yeah. I like, I miss this. I miss telling people, hey, no, I kind of
miss that.
Yeah, like there was a part of it from completely from management, production, like those things, seeing it come together and the crowd responding, right? Because knowing it's everyone's involved in this process, right? You see the artist on stage, but of course. There are a dozen plus people that are involved in it. So I really felt it after that. I came back home and I looked on my phone and I see a message. No, sorry, a missed call from Tadao. Like, who the hell is Tadao? I'm trying to figure this thing out. I could not.
Everybody is Tadao.
Yeah. So Tadao. I'm trying to, right, in my brain, I remember who this person is, right? And the thing about it was, it was actually crazy because I didn't want to come back and try to manage from the ground up. I want to find someone that was really working in it or whatever. And, at that point, I called back, discovered Ola was in Florida. I said, all right, I'm going to fly up to meet you. Right? And that's exactly what I did. I flew up. We ended up going to PF Chang's. Nice. Right? And he had a glass of wine. Right? We there, we talked. I asked him about certain things. Right? I felt like the answers he gave were, demonstrated someone who was very serious about, what he wanted to do and his passion for it. And I love Ola. Ola is a very talented.
Super talented.
In fact, I would go as far as saying, honestly, Ola has far more talent than any other artist that is up there, right? In my opinion, when he was at that sort of level, right? But the fact of the matter is, we went into business together. I mean, he had brought a song to me that at the time, if I remember correctly, right, he was like, Shaf had done a demo on this track called Engine Room. And so I heard it, and he was like, well, what do you think I should do? And I was like, man, you gotta go and record that. But in reality, I would have told that to anybody, right? After hearing the track, it was that good, right? It kind of left an impression. But we didn't know. No one knew what was going to happen, you know. And then we went back out on the road and we started getting involved in the same things again. And everyone was like, "Hey, you're back."
Right.
Like, what do you mean back? Like, I was here before you were born. Like, what are you talking about? Back? Man, the amount of times I've like been part of a movement, right? Like it's just reinvented itself, whatever. It's like, you know, and seeing people come and go and then they hit you with your back. I'm like, you know,
get out.
Yeah, like so. Anyway, and so that's kind of like how it happened. But we were very proactive too. Like we hit the ground running. We went and we shot a music video. We did all those things. You know, we really worked the channels as well as we could. And it wasn't the first time. We'd as a management company throughout the years, we'd always learned what that was, right? You know, with Kes, it was soca and mocha. You know, that was where we did the kickoff. You know, with Nadia, it was. Again, she had a song called Caribbean Girl. I think it was. Man. Yeah, I think it was Caribbean Girl. Yeah. And I think she was going to give that song, not give, but you know what I mean? Sell that song to Alison Hines, right? And then, you know, we were like, no, you know, hold on to this. Right? And again, listen, you know, I'm not here to contest like, no, Simon, I was the one. These things happen in conversations, right? And this is what you're doing, right? So whether it was because of our encouragement or whether it's because they pulled the trigger, the point is that there was that conversation happening that led to something, right? Sure. So essentially with Ola and Engine Room, it was developing a relationship with, I have to give these guys credit to Red Boys. Right? And they did a phenomenal job as well on production on the track. And then man, it kind of set the tone, you know, and we had what was the song that we had after that?
After was another song like that.
Yeah, another kind of pan-like tune, right? I feel terrible not remembering what the song is.
The year after Engine Room, David Ola. Because it was bubbling. I remember seeing Engine Room
party, Isa Man, right?
Isa Man,
right. Something like that, right? Yeah.
But I saw it in Kyrie. People had different, and he was performing in different. Difference is maybe 2-3 weeks before Carnival or something like that.
That was which year?
That was Engine Room year.
Engine Room, yeah. Okay, yeah.
And I mean, you're hearing this song bubbling all the time, and you know it's a big song.
Yeah.
It's also a troublesome song to interfere with. Engine Room has done a hit from in the 80s and thing already. So for him to just name it Engine Room, that was 2023?
Engine Room was 2023.
Check what we'll have in 2024. Yeah, but
it was. I think it went by two names, Isa Man. And something else. Yeah. But Inventor.
Right.
That's what it was. Yeah.
When I see him on stage in Caribbean, I was like, all right, this is like forever music. It's gone. Because the reaction from front to back that you felt with no effort to tell people, well, Ola is not the put your hand in the air and wave. It's just such a...
Yeah.
His performances encapsulate everybody around him.
Yeah.
And at that point, I was like, all right, Ola is back, you know what I mean? 100%. So a couple of questions coming out of that, because when I look at...
Are these questions that are going to get me into trouble?
No. Questions never get you in trouble.
Questions always get you in trouble, depending on how you answer them.
I see Jay-Z doing a reboot of some of his albums recently, right?
Right.
And one of the questions people always ask is if Lil Wayne going to be there.
Right.
They have hits together, you know what I mean? People want to see Lil Wayne, or Jay-Z is in charge of Super Bowl halftime performance, and then people say,
right,
when we get a Weezy halftime performance.
Right.
And then the questions that people throw out, or the people like yourselves who might know what the industry looks like,
right,
is that I don't know if Lil Wayne will be in the frame of mind to show up for the Super Bowl the way he needs to show up, or the level of sobriety that he needs to be in. And he have the hits, right? I don't know that he could say that he don't have the hits, but they said that there was one rehearsal for some appearance he had on the Super Bowl. He's 2.5 hours late for the rehearsal.
Right.
And it's like, how are you going to give him his own show? How are you navigating them spaces with artists?
This is a quiet time of reflection. One in which we say prayers for us, for humanity. You know, I mean, look, I will tell you straight up, man, look, if I had that level of talent, right, and understanding the way you navigate these spaces, I would do everything in my power to do it right.
Okay.
You know? Here's the thing that we don't know. Human beings go through a lot. Some are able to deal with the things that they go through in their life, and some, sadly played over in their mind, right? It's sort of like that spinning record, And the fact of the matter is that we can do our best to nurture talent, guide people, show them tough love, do all those things, right? But in the end, we don't know what that person is really going through. With the demons that they're fighting, right? Like what that life is for them. And so, man, look, if it is that, someone is going through something, shut your ass, let them, right? Try to help how you can, but you don't need to go and make it any worse than it is, because they're already dealing with enough stuff on their own.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so whoever it is that's out there, I just pray for them, man. Like, because I know that there are artists on our radar and off our radar sometimes that are just phenomenal human beings when they can be that.
Right.
And then there are times when they just can't fight what it is that they're going through, So my issue with all of that, of course, is that, when you look at the bevy of hits that any talent may have in this country, or in Barbados or Grenada, right, or Jamaica, not going there. Let's deal with soca.
Sure.
Right? The issue that I have is that we've created, a very, it's a field laden with mines for them, right? Because if they don't have a hit for 1 year, maybe the last hit that they had would carry them through, right? They don't have a hit for 2 years, what's wrong with this person? If you go for 3 years and something is not working for you, man,
career over.
That could be your career over. Now, there are those who play what I call the Patrick Swayze game, right? God rest his soul. But Patrick always had this thing where you thought Patrick was done, and then he come with Ghost. Right?
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? Like he'll come back, Dirty Dancing or whatever it is. Like there's always a movie that somehow Patrick just emerged again, right? And similarly for artists, there is that as well. But I think it's really, really unfair how we, as an industry and as a public, keep on judging these guys on what it is they have this year.
Yeah.
That, to me, I don't know what you'll feel that does to someone mentally.
Of course. I wonder all the time.
But that is not healthy. Imagine going through, first of all, you have a hit song. You already have to do 50 plus gigs in 30 different cities, right? So when do you have time to really sit down, right, and function and think about these things? And you might be like, you're an artist. Well, you can do that.
Yes, no, I don't know if that's that easy.
No, you need time. But pop artists are allowed 2 or 3 years off to go and, work with the top writers, work with producers, develop 100 trackless songs, and then be like, oh, well, guess what? I can narrow it down to these. We can't even bring out albums anymore. I know Marshall just brought out one, but I mean...
He's one of the few. You don't see it again.
You can't.
Because why? Why bother? It's something that I wonder about. There's a lot of things that you do and talk about that I don't understand at all. And that is one. Because, for instance, maybe let's talk about it from the audience perspective first, where... So, Soca Training was an example of that to me. Remix of Soca Training with Maximus at the time. Or then Full Extreme.
Right.
It's the examples of that, where... It is not just a hit. It's runaway monster hits that are going to last forever and ever.
Yeah.
And then next year, that same audience will stand up on you. It's like, all right, I don't. Yeah, and you're giving them a year or two extra, which is real grace, because sometimes... No.
We saw it with JW and Blaze, right?
That's right. With
Palance, right? I mean, Maximus, I will always just know him as Maximus, right? Because that's how I managed him, throughout those years. But the thing with Max is that he is such an exceptional talent, and there's no denying that. But I don't think he would disagree with me when I say that he will confront you, right? If he doesn't like something.
Sure.
And this is an industry that doesn't want to deal with the confrontation, right? It would prefer to sweep something under the rug, rather than come to terms with what this is. And because of that, he is an artist, probably has suffered, right? Because he speaks his mind, right? And you're not going to talk over Maximus.
No, yeah, direct. Yeah, I can't. It's humanly impossible.
Right? So I think that really just brings us back to what this is, right? We're involved in a genre that doesn't do itself any favors, right? Where you can be excused for bringing back the same song you did over and over again because it just
Well,
makes
that's
me
what
jump.
I mean by our audience, because we go to see people, some of the people you brought before and we mentioned here, where if they come back with the same songs you brought them for then in the early 90s and they sing it now, the show sell out.
Yeah.
Like as you see Kirk Franklin, people singing Stomp Whole Night. That's a whole song, that's 100 years old. But our soca artists or calypso, any genre we create here, it seems to be. So is it the audience that's stifling it?
It's the culture first.
Right.
We've created that culture and we've inculcated it, and we've just kept on, unfortunately not doing anything to fight it. It started back in the days when my mom and my aunt would be like, "That's devil music," right? It's now Ash Wednesday,
of course,
right?
right,
It started when radio stations would switch strictly to reggae dancehall, and for 20 years we got that. So obviously when you're dealing with those sort of dynamics, you have not created a winning situation for any of us. And that's a huge problem to deal with.
And you think the industry responding to that? Because sometimes I wonder if it's promoters. As a Fed promoter, I suppose I had to make my party swing, right? So we use difference as an example. Every year I had to decide who. And when they hear songs early, is either they're not looking at the artist. I would have thought as a business person, I would say, all right, I want these artists because that's who control it. And you think, no, there's the biggest artist, that's who I want to book. Yeah. Whereas here, they seem to listen, they want to hear the song.
Of course. Yeah, because the fact of the matter is they control that part of the game, right? Like, so this is still, Trinidad is still the platform that boosts you.
Right.
You make it through this carnival successfully, you're going to hit 80 places, right? And you become a millionaire, right? Seemingly overnight, but you've worked your ass off for it, right? So I think promoters understand, that too well, that it's like they have a certain level of power and they utilize it in that vein. But the sad part again for artists is that every year Bruno, you have to come up with a hit every year or else.
That's a nightmare.
Like no one tells that to Bruno Mars or any of those other guys, right? But we have that on our backs.
Yeah.
Right? So promoters would call us all the time. I remember, getting those calls for any artist that we had. What do they have next year? Or what do they have this year? Or that's the kind of conversation.
So you help manage that? Because I guess all right, so when you hear Engine Room, you're feeling good about it. But the truth is when it hit the road, you go, no.
Until social media, radio, right? And radio is sort of like, there's it doesn't have the strength as it did before. Some people would say it's dying. But I think that naturally it has to evolve, right? In order to face the challenges of what social media is today, right? So if you don't have it, unfortunately, you could be in a bit of a bind, right?
But you're, from a talent management standpoint, you help with that? So in other words, how you get radio stations to play? Is relationships?
Well, back in the day, we had a very simple trick. We would hire people that would call. We would literally set up our office, telling you straight up what it is. And we would call the radio stations. I would put on 4 different voices.
On request
for battle with beats. Yay! What you got going on there, boy? You want to play Precious? Like, you know what I mean? Like literally, listen, man. Look, but we would do those things because we wanted to make sure. But we also believe in the songs as well.
Of course, you have to.
Yeah. but man, we did all sorts of things, right? Like literally, that is what you do for your artist. Look, the things that you all don't know, and the things that I wouldn't embarrass an artist about, but I will say that a manager's strength, right? Sometimes the artist doesn't understand because they're going through their emotions and the manager's in an office, right? You don't know what that manager is doing. But trust me, there are those managers that are a waste of time. They're a receptionist at best, right? Oh, hey, how are you doing? Yeah, you want to book this, right? And then there are those managers that are really trying to figure out, because they're so burdened by it, right? Like, how do I make this thing work? And they're going out and trying to make things work. But there are also those managers too that are also putting out fires. Things that you don't know, from blackmail to what have you, right? Where I've dealt with those situations and I've been like, okay, we have a problem here, right? And this is a situation that grown men or women will cry, right? And it's like, yeah, this is happening. This is a real thing. Yeah. And then we have to figure out, okay, how do we do this? And sometimes it's solved through connections that you have on the ground. Sometimes it's because you know someone who can hack a server, right? And that's where connections come in, and then we found out who this person is. And you won't believe who their parents are, right? And like, this is the person who has this information. And
or blackmail in terms of somebody could leak something that heard the artist.
Oh yeah, well, we've been through that before. Oh yeah. And I won't go as far as save that person's career, but save them a heck of a lot of embarrassment.
Yeah, personally, I suppose.
Oh yeah. It would have been damaging. But I'm not the only one who has done that for an artist. I'm pretty sure there are other managers who've faced those kind of fires, right? So we out fires. But quite honestly, this is another phase of my career. Yeah. And I'm going to leave other more capable, ladies and gents to deal with that stuff. But there are a couple of artists that we're still working with. There's a tremendous artist called John G. He's a musical artist that does sort of like reggae folk world type and easy deal with, right? Easy to deal with. All right, Trini.
Simon, we need to book David for a Patreon only episode and we talk behind the scenes thing. You can just talk, call everybody name and
No. That's why I can't drink alcohol. If I only drank alcohol in this program, it'd be like Cat Williams.
That's what we need. That's what we need.
No, man. Like, so, DJ Quest, who I think was first runner up in the Red World DJ competition.
Right.
We do some work with him and he's a great guy as well, very talented. Michael Cherry. That's really, I think when you talk about management and because I've heard people talk about what makes great managers, and I'm not saying I'm a great manager, but I think what makes great managers is the ability to really jump on an opportunity. And where we jumped on an opportunity with Michael was we built a relationship with many casting directors. One of them said, hey, we got a script and it said something about a Caribbean person in it, and then we were able to galvanize forces through a community that we have called ODOS, which stands for 1 Degree of Separation. And then that community, right, of about 1,000 people, but on WhatsApp it's several hundred, right? We were able to work with Michael so that he actually went and rehearsed with other professional actors just to make sure he was ready for it. Then we went into a studio like this with Marcus Lefouk, his production company. Regina King comes online with John Ridley, who did 12 Years a Slave.
Right.
And Michael, I felt on that night he had nailed it. And when we had done it, but we're like, we don't know where this is going to go, right? But it was during a time when nothing was happening for anyone, no work, nothing.
Right, yeah.
And then this pops up where we weren't working with any artist, right? And then Michael goes and he smashes it, and boom, we get the part in that movie. And that was a 2-year journey, because you go, you act in the movie, something sadly bad happened, right? It created delays, right? Reshoots. Michael then, gets invited to the premiere, right? We get invited along with him. We meet more people. We're sitting down right next to, some of the most amazing creators in the business and executives. And then we build relationships, and that created more work,
Makes sense.
But again, to get there, it all started from, that day when I saw the bartender come out.
Of course, yeah. It's a real interesting, yeah.
And say, hey, you know.
And
So,
even in your mindset, it kind of leads me to just two questions before we close. The global nature of your thinking,
right,
and then the local and year-to-year nature of soca music. What's your thoughts? Is it that we're in a space where we could really break through? Because I have this thing where our podcast could be wherever we want it to be.
Right.
Soca music, are we in that space where we could do what Red Rats and them do consistently?
Cricket scare me.
Well, I mean, look, I think I've been asked this before. Is soca music dead? Right? Like that's the kind of thinking that sometimes, or the question that comes up.
Yeah.
I think that there's some aspects to that where I would say that, you know, dead and evolving are sometimes very closely related, right? Like in the sense that there's stuff that we did 20 years ago with soca music that I don't think we could do today. And that part of it is probably we have to kind of put in a casket. Right. And then there's a part that is evolving through Trinidad and what we're learning, like we've seen with the success with Young Brother and right, where we recognize that there's a part to this that we could take further.
Sure.
So what I will say is if we are not careful and we don't start, you know, finding ways of really and truly making things work for us in terms of streaming, right? The way we utilize those relationships with collaborations and working social media platforms, etc. We're gonna have a heck of a problem, right? And so it's not no final nail in the coffin or anything like that. I won't be as dramatic as that. But I do think that we're not in a healthy place if we think that this thing is running on a festival motor right now, right? You take away the festival, right? The pandemic demonstrated that, right? And you had artists who didn't want to release music, and some of them would tell you flat out, if this is a hit, why am I releasing this in a time when I can't tour? It makes sense. I mean, when you think about it, it's like, yeah. But then the other part to that is, well, this is a problem. Because if you can only make money from going out and performing on a stage, then our music has not really elevated to the point where, as a genre, we're competitive. And don't try to tell me, well, you know, like I've had artists before, you know, like, why is it that you can't get me in a room with Bruno Mars? You haven't sold 1 million albums, records, singles, whatever. Why are we having this conversation?
Well, if the person with Bruno Mars shows, they could answer that question because if I'm on social media and I have one little song that halfway catching, them ain't taking a meeting with me neither. Why do I end up in the room with that soca artist if I know struggling artist?
But we're still also a very minuscule. And again, I'm choosing my words carefully because I know there are those, like I have a best friend. I can't say one bad thing about soca. He don't play like you're coming to Miami and calling me, right? Like, you know what I mean? He doesn't love it soca. But I'm not here to in any way talk about it in a manner of like I want soca to thrive, but it has to do that through understanding what the problems and challenges are and how we defeat them.
Right, of course.
And it has to be defeated by putting on music all year round, making this thing 50% in terms of how you hear it on radio, for example, being more, exploring the opportunities that Trinidad and other areas have created that we can, do things with Latin artists. Like there's so many different things.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, I want to invite you back to talk about some of them things because I feel like there's a lot, again, it's such a dark world sometimes. Like we see artists on stage and as a fan, you think the artist show up, you drive yourself, they book you on gig. You really genuinely think that.
Yeah.
And you feel like all the ups and downs that the artists go through have to do with the person. Yeah. And it's refreshing to hear some of these things from behind the scenes. And I want to thank you as well for the global thinking. It encourages me. Yeah. When I read your bio, I say, Jesus Christ, you're not doing enough. In terms of how we think about it or what we believe we can.
Like my mother who asked me, what are you doing?
Yeah, that's mommy's. That's what they're supposed to do. But thanks very much, this was a pleasure. I want to invite you back to talk about how we finishing and fixing some of them things too.
Of course, always willing to do that too.
You do it on Patreon so you could call all the names in the room. But thanks very much. I appreciate it.
Love it. Thanks again, man. Thanks to you and David, of course.
My pleasure. David.
Of course. He went to the tea, so come on.
All right.